Okay, so now that I have my base plan geometry imported, I'm going to start working on my drawing. And I'm going to be working on this drawing from the ground up. So since my first task is to create my ground plane shapes, um, I'm going to start doing that by um, using some of this base plan geometry. So for example, let's say that I want this area right here is supposed to be turf. So in order for me to color that green or render it whichever way I want to, I need that to be a shape, because right now it's just individual lines. Actually, they're grouped together, so I need to ungroup. But once I ungroup, you can see that it's just an individual line. And I can't really apply color to this unless the whole thing is a shape. So I have several options for me right now. I can either lock this base plan layer and just use it to create new shapes, and I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the ground layer and unlock it. And I can either trace over this line work with the pen tool, and I'm just gonna demonstrate that right now. I would just click on the anchor points. And here's where it gets tricky. I can snap to this anchor point, but to be able to trace that is not an exact science. I'm just eyeballing it. And then clip that handle. And then this is straight line, so it's pretty easy. But again, when I come down to this curve and I close my shape, I'm just estimating and tracing about where it is, but it's not exactly the same spot as my previous one. You can see a little bit of error right here. But what this allows me to do is I can go into my landscape swatches. So if I go to swatch libraries, nature, and let's just do the landscape swatch collection. I'm going to use this color for grass. So now I have that shape. It's not exactly what I want. You can see a difference here. I'm actually going to go ahead and lock this ground layer for a second. I'm going to make everything in the base plan a thinner line because I don't want it to be that thick. So I'm going to do Control A. And instead of 1 point, I'm actually going to do 0.1 to make it really, really thin. Lock that back up, turn on the ground plane layer, make it current. And if I'm not 100% convinced that this is the shape I want, and again, the problem with this is that since this is not perfect, and then let's say that I want to continue working, and I come up here and try to work, now I have this anchor point, and my next anchor point, and again, these two curves, when they meet together, they might not be exactly in the same spot. I'm just gonna trim this short for now, just close it off right here just to demonstrate. I'm gonna, with the eyedropper tool, just select the same render. You can see right there that you run this risk of not having entirely close shapes. So you can do that. This is appropriate to do it in tracing with the pen tool in some instances, but for this, I actually prefer using the live paint tool, and we're going to take a look at that right now. So if I go back on my base plan and I do Control A to have everything highlighted, I can go under this shape builder tool. There's actually a live paint bucket tool. And what that does is that it basically creates a shape out of whatever the paint bucket fills. So if I just click, you can see that it just filled in that area using the boundaries that were previously selected. Okay, so the only problem with this tool is that now you can see that it has these squares that are different. That's just telling you that it's a live shape. So sometimes you have to actually hit expand out here to separate it out, and then ungroup, because now it's grouped everything together, the lines that were in the base plan and this new shape that it created. So you have to ungroup a couple times, and now I have this shape, and I still have the same geometry that I had before. So now that I have this shape, I can move that shape to my ground layer by highlighting it and then moving that box up to the ground layer. And if I turn it off, I can see that I still have my base plan geometry in its own layer intact. And this method is non-destructive. So I'm going to continue doing that for this. Obviously, I'm not going to use this wacky pattern for the turf. And use that. I'll go back on my base plan and just select everything again. Control A. And I'm just going to keep using the live paint bucket tool. And at this point, I don't really care what color it is because I can just change it later. I'm interested in creating the shapes. So I can create this shape. Zoom out a little bit more. And this shape. Okay, and I think I have all the shapes that I want created. So I'm going to go ahead and click expand, ungroup, and click outside just to check it again, and it's still grouped, so I'm going to hit ungroup one more time. It just creates multiple groups, a group within a group. And now that I can see that this shape is by itself, I'm going to undo that. I'm just going to select everything that does not have a stroke, because I know that in this case everything that does not have a stroke has a fill. So I'm going to say select same stroke color, and I'm going to move all of that geometry to my ground layer. So I'm going to unlock the ground layer, and then with this red square highlighted, I'm just going to click, drag, and release. And now all of that geometry is green, which you can say the green belongs to the ground layer. And I'm going to lock that. And if I turn off the ground layer, I should still be able to, see all of the line work from the base plan. Now let's keep working on this ground layer. Let's switch this stuff so it's not so obnoxious color. And I know that this is some kind of pavement, so I'm just going to change it to this color for now. Same with this. I believe this was have some kind of brick. I think there might have been some stone as well. And then the rest of it were bed lines. So I'm just gonna make the bed lines a darker tan color for now. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think that I may have selected a line that's a little bit too thin for the base plan. So I'm going to go and say, actually the trouble I'm having is that I can't see those lines because they're on the layer below, so I'm just going to move the base plan layer above the ground layer. There we go, now we can see them. And I'm going to do select all. I'm going to still make them a little bit thinner, just a 25 point. I think that looks pretty good. Lock this back up, and then going back to the ground layer, I also want to fill in these walls. I'm just gonna do very quickly, just do black rectangles. Again, using the smart guides to snap exactly to the corners. I'm going to do select same fill color to select everything that has a black fill. And with the Pathfinder tool, I'm going to do a union. So now all of these shapes are together. It seems that looks about right. Now in the next video we're gonna further work on our ground plane